The sun hung low in the sky on that fateful Saturday afternoon, casting a warm golden glow over Cedar Hill. The sweet scent of blooming lilacs wafted through my open window, a stark contrast to the tempest that churned inside me. I had been looking forward to a quiet weekend, a chance to escape from the constant demands of my life. But the universe had other plans. I had barely settled into my favorite armchair, a soft blanket draping over my lap, when I heard the urgent knock on the door. "Hey, Evelyn, got a minute?" My brother's voice echoed through the small entryway before I could even respond, his tone carrying an air of an impending crisis. I sighed, setting aside my book, the one I had chosen deliberately to unwind, and braced myself for the storm. When I opened the door, I was greeted not just by John but by the tempest of chaos he brought with him: Jake, Lily, and little Tommy, his 3 children, all under the age of 8. I'm just dropping them off. There's a work emergency I need to sort out. Don't worry, it will just be for a few hours. Say goodbye, kids." He barely made eye contact with me, his gaze darting around my apartment as if searching for the nearest exit. "Wait, John, can't you just—" I started, my heart already racing. But he was already gone, leaving me standing in the doorway as the sound of giggles and shrieks filled my living room. A wave of mixed emotions crashed over me. Part of me was thrilled to see the kids, to embrace their wild energy, but the other part was heavy with the realization of yet another obligation thrust upon me. "Evelyn, look at my new toy," Jake announced, rushing past me, nearly trampling over the stack of books on my coffee table. He held a plastic dinosaur aloft as if it were a trophy won at battle, and my heart twisted. "That's really cool, Jake," I managed to say, but my voice felt thin, stretched too far. I could already sense the impending chaos starting to swirl around the apartment like a dust storm. "Can we watch cartoons?" Lily chimed in, her pigtails bobbing with excitement as she wrung her small hands together, her big blue eyes shining with anticipation. "Sure, let me get it set up," I replied, using a cheerful tone I didn't fully feel, already feeling the weight of the inevitable noise that would soon drown me. Giants, dinosaurs, and all the chaos that accompanied 3 little bodies bouncing on my couch invaded my living room. I could hardly discern the soundtrack of laughter from the TV blaring in the background. Stickiness covered my surfaces, blending the remnants of a half-eaten cookie sweet and cloying, and I felt the nerves in my shoulders tight as I glanced around my once serene apartment. As I rolled my eyes playfully at Lily, who had climbed atop my favorite armchair with an overturned bowl of popcorn, I closed my eyes for a moment, searching for some hidden reserve of patience that seemed to be evaporating faster than the afternoon light. "Remember," I called, "let's keep the popcorn out of the cushions, okay?" But my plea was lost in the tumult of competing cartoons shrieking for their attention and the hectic dance of giggles weaving through the chaos. I could see Tommy, the youngest, looking wide-eyed and innocent, still reaching out for the dinosaur Jake had left behind. I found myself smiling at him. How was it possible to love someone so much yet feel so utterly burdened by that love? Then, amidst the laughter and the fluff of my living room, I pulled out my phone, checking it absently as I tried to tune into the animated antics unfolding on screen. My heart fell when I saw the pictures popping up on my social media feed. John, his easy smile on a beach, surrounded by friends half reclined in beach chairs, oblivious to the storm he had left behind. "How can he do this?" I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. Anger bubbled within me, each scroll down my feed only adding fuel to the fire. How could he abandon me like this? "Evelyn, look what I can do," Jake shouted, and suddenly I was thrust back into the moment as he executed a wild somersault off the couch, landing with a thud that rattled the coffee table. "Jake!" I exclaimed, feeling a mix of alarm and laughter surging. "Careful, you can't do that. I can do anything," he declared, flashing a triumphant grin as if he were a superhero in training. I couldn't help but laugh, even as anxiety washed over me. "Yes, but how about we try something a bit less risky?" I suggested, trying to redirect his energy. "How about some coloring? The floor is much safer." "Coloring?" Lily squealed, her enthusiasm immediately infectious. My heart softened and I quickly added, "You can all color on my big table. Let's make a mural." "I'll get the crayons." Armed with a handful of crayons from my craft drawer, I spread them on the table, their rich colors bright against the whitewashed surface. "Here you go. Make the biggest, best mural ever." As they began to scribble, I felt a bittersweet mixture of joy and confinement cage me. The sound of their laughter, once a pleasant background tune, became increasingly overwhelming. My thoughts wandered back to John, my brother who once valued our bond. Did he even realize how exhausting it had become for me? Or was I just a convenient fallback, an aunt who had no children of her own and thus could be relied upon with no consequences? The afternoon stretched into a blur of color, noise, and sticky fingers pressing into my walls. By the time they had all thrown themselves into an artistic frenzy, I felt battered by the gales of their energy. And as they sprawled on my floor, their clothes dotted with colorful marks, I overheard Lily asking through her giggles, "Can we have a dance party?" "Why not?" I said, my voice filled with a mix of reluctance and affection. I swayed lightly to the rhythm as they stumbled to their feet, shaking their limbs wildly. I fought the urge to join in, wanting nothing more than a quiet corner to collect my thoughts, but the joy that broke free from their innocent laughter pulled me back into the moment. As they twirled around, my spirit lifted slightly, momentarily forgetting the mess that surrounded me and the frustration gnawing within. I felt a warmth in my heart. How could I dislike this chaos that was, in part, mine too? But each joyous moment felt like shackles wrapped around my ankles, the echo of John's dismissive remarks mocking me in the back of my mind. "Evelyn, you should come over more often," Jake yelled as they tumbled back to the couch, breathless and giggling. "You're the best aunt ever." I watched them, and behind my smiles, a sharp pang of guilt cut through me. I wanted to be the fun aunt, the one they would always remember fondly, but this obligation clipped my wings, turning my time with them from joy into duty. "Okay, dance party is on hold," I said, gathering the crayons that had rolled onto the floor, desperately grabbing at the edge of my sanity. "Let's take a snack break instead. Who wants apples and peanut butter?" They responded with a chorus of ecstatic cheers, and for that moment, I reveled in the thought that I could offer them something wholesome. I rushed to the kitchen, working quickly to cut the apples, my anxiety creeping back in as the sound of 3 young children transforming from gigglers to raucous rascals filled the air behind me. As I returned with healthy snacks, I forced a smile, yet felt a swelling frustration while watching them devour the apples without restraint. I wanted nothing more than to reclaim my time, a boundary that had long been buried beneath obligation and expectation. "Hey kids," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You know what? I love spending time with you, but I also need to be honest. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed today." "Why?" Lily asked, her innocent forehead wrinkling. "Because this wasn't really planned. I need some help too, you know?" I could feel a knot tightening in my throat as I struggled to express my feelings. Jake looked at Lily, then back at me, his fishbowl eyes wide, processing my words. "You should just tell Dad that you don't want to babysit," he said innocently. I froze at the sting of those words. "Yeah, Evelyn, be like, no way," Tommy squealed, marching his small, chubby fingers in the air. My heart sank deeper. Could it really be that simple? Would I really speak up? What if they didn't understand? But just before I could formulate a response, my phone buzzed again. I pulled it out to see the new photos piling onto my feed. John, his carefree laughter echoing through the screen, felt like daggers in my heart. "Kids, let's clean up," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "We have a lot to do before your dad picks you up." "'Kay," they chorused, and even in the chaos, I saw their small fingers darting to help. As I knelt with them, arms piled with crayons and snacks, I realized one thing: this cycle would not become my life if I chose to say no. The anger I felt pooled behind a thick wall of guilt, wrestling with the love I had for them. I had to confront that love, confront my brother before this cast me forever into a role I didn't ask for. "I need to talk to John," I whispered to myself, feeling the determination rise like the sun setting behind the hills. I observed the children around me, and despite the loud music and distractions, I suddenly felt ready. I was not just an aunt. This time, I was taking back not just my weekend, but my life. I sank into the couch, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. It was the chaos of vibrant plastic toys and scattered crayons that reminded me of both my duties and my looming frustrations. The room swirled with sounds of laughter and playful squeals. My nieces and nephew were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within me. The bright colors of the toys, the reds, blues, and yellows, felt almost suffocating in their vibrancy. As I looked around, I couldn't help but feel trapped. The playful chaos was a bittersweet reminder of what it meant to care, a role I had been casually thrown into, expected to embrace without question. "I have to do something," I whispered to myself. There had to be a way to break free, a way to reclaim my identity. John, my brother, seemed to have this picture in his mind where I was always available, like a light switch he could flip on and off at his convenience. But I was not just the reliable aunt. I was Evelyn Baker, a 30-year-old woman with dreams and aspirations dulled beneath the weight of obligation. The thought of challenge ignited a flame within me. When John called at the beginning of the week, I had already steeled myself for a confrontation that surrounded the familiar topic of babysitting. His tone was brusque, the demands of life in full effect. "I need a favor," he had stated bluntly, as if this were a routine errand he needed me to run. The gravitas of his request hung heavily in the air. "Can you take the kids for a few hours while I handle some stuff? You know how chaotic it gets otherwise." "Of course, I would love to babysit," I said, the sweetness in my voice almost stinging my throat. "But you need to promise me one thing: pick them up by 6. I need to have my evening to myself." That was a leap, a bold statement made in the heat of vulnerability. At that moment, I heard a short pause on the other end, where 1,000 unsaid words floated between us. "Sure, I'll get them by 6, John replied, somewhat taken aback, but his little assent felt like victory, like I had placed a brick of empowerment into a tower of courage, slowly but surely making it tall enough to support me. That Friday came around with a dizzying rush. I greeted the kids when they arrived with open arms, their energy contagious, although it was precisely the chaos I had aimed to embrace only for my own blame-laden purposes. The moment they rushed into my space, I wrapped my arms around them, letting their giggles engulf me. The youngest, with curly hair and a twinkle in her eye, clung to my leg. Aunt Evie, we made a castle," she exclaimed as she tugged my sleeve with eagerness that melted my resolve, if only temporarily. "Oh, wow. I can't wait to see this castle," I declared, letting the playful spirit sweep me up in the tide of their excitement. Their laughter rang through the room, and for a fleeting moment, I let myself be lost in the giggles and shouts of "look at my drawing." "And can we play tag?" I played a great role, feeding into their enthusiasm, and yet every tick of the clock echoed the impending revelation I had planned for later that evening. With every minute, I could feel the weight of the task resting on my shoulders, but I was determined to shift that weight to John, the real player in this charade. As the sun dipped lower, casting a soft glow through the windows, I embarked on a kaleidoscopic journey of making memories with my cherished little ones, all the while practicing my rhetoric in whispers to myself, preparing each point for the upcoming conversation. "Okay, kids, how about a puppet show? We can use those stuffed animals over there," I suggested, knowing that we needed a distraction as the clock inched closer to the dreaded mark. Their eyes lit up, bouncing in the air with newfound excitement. Yes, I want to be the lion," shouted the oldest, his enthusiasm drawing a smile across my face. "All right then, lion," I replied, making a theatrical gasp. "You will need to have a big roar then." I rumbled dramatically, eliciting their laughter as we unfolded stories and made characters leap off our make-believe stage. As their voices crescendoed, blending with the fading light, it became a small but treasured memory. But my heart thudded with a different beat beneath that joy. It reminded me of the impossible romantic notions I once held about family. In this little bubble of happiness, I felt the fragile line between love and obligation fracture, and I kept reminding myself of why I had accepted this moment of chaos. Finally, with only minutes left before John's arrival, I felt a musky sense of tension seep into my stomach like a curling smoke. "All right, kiddos, let's clean up before your dad gets here." The moment had come. The kids were accustomed to my playful authority and began darting about, picking up toys as I held a friendly but firm demeanor. When the door rattled open like unbeatable fate and John stepped inside, the moment felt electric. Wrapped in the tang of aftershave and the remnants of a busy day, he looked comfortable, yet out of place amongst the whirlwind he had just joined. "Hey guys, did you have fun?" he asked with a smile, his expression relaxed as he stepped in the doorway, the light painting his shadow behind him. "Dad, we played a lion and a princess and made a castle," the youngest shouted, her voice shrill with urgency as she rushed towards him. At that moment, I put on my best cheerful act, embracing the tension as if it were an artful dance. John's eyes flickered between the children and me, a look of genuine warmth, perhaps tinged with naivety. "That's awesome. I bet it was a blast." "Oh, yes, a real blast," I replied with feigned exuberance, my heart pounding as he perceived nothing amiss. I clapped my hands to gather the kids around before I could drop the barrier that had been carefully built between us. "Can we tell him about the castle, Aunt Evie?" the middle child asked eagerly. "Why, yes, we can. Come on, gather around," I said, her reminder bringing my revelation to the forefront. "But I need to share something important too, something about me." I lured them in close, drawing in their curious little faces. "Mommy says we should always be honest." "What is it, Aunt Evie?" the oldest one asked, his eyes wide with innocence and wisdom wrapped into a single question. Their delightful curiosity provided a sweet moment of coverage as I glanced toward John. Your Aunt Evie needs to tell Daddy something too, I began, letting the words simply tumble out as I locked onto John's eyes, feeling the simmering emotion within me rising as I leaned in for the impending confrontation. As much as I love having you wild ones over, I feel really overwhelmed sometimes. It's like I'm their backup plan, you know. I care deeply for you, but my life doesn't exist only to be your babysitter. Silence sank into the room, propping up the intensity of my words. I could see John's brows furrow and the flicker of confusion dance across his face, but I pressed on, refusing to let hesitation rise. I want you to understand what that is like for me. I can't just be available whenever you need me. I also want a life of my own. My voice trembled as I fought through a wave of vulnerability. Could this fog of words really clear things up? Look, I get it, he replied, lifting his hands in a surrendering gesture. I really do. It has just been easier to rely on you. I took you for granted. My heart raced. I could almost hear the gears of realization clicking together in his mind. I have a life, John. I want to make my own choices, and I shouldn't have to feel guilty about it. I am sorry. I did not know you felt that way, he admitted with a hint of chastisement in his voice, his expression going from confusion to irritation. I didn't think about how my actions impacted you. The room seemed to expand and contract around us, my weary heart gaining momentum from his acceptance. The weight I had been carrying began to lift, and in its place was a sense of clarity, each word building upon the last. As the evening expanded around us, I held my ground, ready to surface the layers of my own struggles and disappointments, dissecting the interactions I had wanted to bury deep. I could see his defenses melting away, creating a moment of connection between siblings that had long lay dormant. You've got to understand that it's not just me wanting time off. It's about the fact that I deserve the same respect and consideration that you routinely apply to your own life choices and schedule, I articulated, affixing every word with a weight of self-respect that shone through my voice. I could feel the understanding radiating from him like sunlit warmth. You're right, Evie. I have been selfish in expecting your availability without acknowledging your own life. I am sorry. In that fleeting moment, standing amid the chaos that had materialized into clarity, I felt a surge of power flow through me, a firm realization that I was reclaiming my own authority. I wasn't just laying a trap for his neglect. I was building a bridge that promised to facilitate real, meaningful change in how we understood each other. I deserve to have my own choices, I emphasized, my heart swelling with conviction. And I will find ways to remind you that I can't always be the one to help, because I must prioritize myself too. John remained silent, absorbing the weight of my words like healing water. The children were quietly watching, their little ears attentive and intrigued. Maybe my words didn't just resonate with my brother, but also with them, paving steps towards healthy boundaries for all of us, the desired family dynamic, emerging from chaotic layers and redefining our life together. And in that living moment, I felt the walls loosen around me, letting in the fresh air of empowerment, as I began visualizing a future where I could be more than just the gregarious aunt, the confident woman who carved her own path while holding onto the bonds of love. The tables had begun to turn, and I was standing right in the middle of it all, a peaceful warrior ready for whatever lay ahead after that pivotal confrontation. I felt like I had climbed a steep mountain, but was only midway up. The weight of both victory and uncertainty sat heavy on my chest, a mixture of elation and apprehension. John and I had touched on some hard truths that had been brewing beneath the surface for far too long, but now it was time for me to dig deeper. I had made my feelings clear, yet words alone would not suffice. I was determined to cement my stance and ensure my message would punctuate the air between us like a tense drumbeat. In the days that followed, I caught myself gazing out of the window, watching the leaves of the oak tree sway lightly in the wind, a metaphor for the freedom I craved, but had never allowed myself to fully embrace. I refrained from agreeing to future babysitting invitations, which were countless and varied like the tangled roots of that very same tree. Instead, I focused on reestablishing what freedom looked like for me. There was beauty in solitude, in the quiet moments when I could reflect on my own dreams and desires. I dove into hobbies I had long neglected, painting, jogging in the mornings when the dew still clung to the grass, and visiting little cafes downtown that served the best pastries. Each new experience felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been tucked away for too long. But as the upcoming weekend approached, I felt that familiar knot of dread settle in my stomach. My phone buzzed with a frantic text from John, the urgency in his quivering words hinting at a level of anxiety I had never seen before. "I really need you this weekend. Can you help?" The stark contrast between his plea and my newfound independence sent my heart racing. For a fleeting moment, I felt my resolve falter, the old familiar pull of obligation tugging at my insides like a frayed string. I could almost see him, pacing in his living room, a hand scratching the back of his head in frustration, his face etched with concern. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I reminded the inner voice that had emerged recently. My voice, the voice that I had fought fiercely to reclaim. No longer was I the always available babysitter bound by duty. I was a woman with dreams and aspirations beyond the walls of my brother's home. So I typed back deliberately, "I would love to help, but I have plans this weekend." I knew that my words were weighty, laced with newfound conviction. His reply came swiftly, as if he had been waiting with bated breath. "But I am counting on you. What should I do?" With each tap of the screen, I imagined the flickers of irritation coursing through him like electric shocks. I could sense the denial rising in his chest, the thoughts racing in his mind as he struggled to accept that I was no longer his safety net. Inside, my heart twisted momentarily. I wanted desperately for him to understand, to grasp the shifts I was making in my life. I wanted him to see that this wasn't merely about babysitting, but about redefining our relationship. This was about bold boundaries that would allow both of us to grow. My hands hovered over my phone, racked by indecision, but ultimately I knew I had to push through this barrier. I texted back, "I think it is time for you to find other arrangements. I love my nieces and nephew, but I also love my freedom." The silence that followed felt like an eternity, stretching on like an unresolved chord. It was a silence that echoed my deepest fears: fear of losing our bond, fear of being misunderstood, and most glaringly, fear of doubting my own choices. I used the time to fortify my resolve, to wrap myself in the strength I had summoned just a week before. Every second that ticked by was a reminder that I was not alone in this. I had my dreams whispering encouragement, soothing my frayed nerves. Then, after what felt like ages, the silence shattered as John unleashed a flurry of texts. "You are being selfish," he shot back, each word like a cold splash of water on my face. "How can you just abandon your family like this? Do you even realize what you are throwing away?" With each incoming message, I could feel my heartbeat quickening, pumping adrenaline into my veins. I stood firm, heart racing as I read his words, knowing I had to break the cycle of irrational expectations that surrounded us. "I am not abandoning you," I typed, the steady rhythm of my fingers reassuring me. "I love my family, but I cannot be your fallback plan any longer. I am worthy of my own time and experiences." His response was immediate, and the intensity was palpable through the screen. "It is not fair, you always used to help. How can you just stop? You don't realize how much the kids need you." Their need tore at me like a simultaneous sigh and swell of affection, but I had to scrape the remnants of obligation off the table, like crumbs from a missed meal. "I know they need me, but that is not what this is about," I responded. "This is about me finding my footing, about taking steps toward becoming the person I want to be." The longer our conversation unfolded, the more I found my footing. I could feel that power rising within me, propelling me to stand my ground. "Look," I typed amidst my swirling thoughts, "I am not saying I will never babysit again. I just need a different kind of balance that allows me to focus on my own life first. I will visit the kids when I can, but only when it aligns with my own life." I knew the words were a reminder for him as much as they were for me. My heart raced, fluttering like the fluttering leaves outside, each beat echoing resilience. "I assure you, my love for you and your family has not disappeared, but I am taking the necessary steps to put myself first," I added thoughtfully, hoping to give him a glimpse of my intentions. There was a long pause from his end, followed by a simple but powerful response: a single "okay." That one word hung in the air like a cotton candy puff, sweet and fleeting, yet somehow grounding. He admitted that I was right. It felt like a small victory, but I refrained from celebrating too soon, knowing this was just one battle in the larger war for my independence. I sank back into my chair, a mix of nervous energy and the giddiness of triumph rushing through me. I had pushed against the tide, but I could not ignore the fact that unresolved feelings still simmered below the surface. What did it mean for our relationship going forward? Could he accept my newfound boundaries? As I stared at the glow of my phone screen, the sense of liberation washed over me like waves rolling softly onto the shore. I had taken a bold step forward, and for the first time, I felt the edges of my world beginning to expand instead of contract. No longer would I conform to someone else's timelines or expectations. My identity could flourish on its own merits, no longer shaded by obligations looming shadow. With a soft sigh, I turned my phone face down, allowing the sense of peace to envelop me. I stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the world beyond my own. The sky, painted in hues of lavender and blush, felt like a celebration of my choice. I was ready to forge a life, informed by my own terms, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the inkling of hope shining through the clouds that had once shrouded me. The aftermath of my confrontation with him was one that felt like walking on a tightrope, swaying precariously above a canyon of old resentment. I had to give him space, not just for him to process the tension left in the air, but also for me to navigate my own feelings. Many nights, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while the haunting echoes of our fight looped through my mind. Did I do the right thing? I would ask, unsure of the answers swirling around my thoughts. Did I truly draw those lines, or had I simply erased years of being the person everyone leaned on? Each question pulled at the corners of my heart like a petulant child tugging on a grown-up sleeve. The hardest part was knowing that my beloved nieces and nephew were caught in the crossfire of our adult misunderstandings. On weekends, I would often sift through old photographs of the kids sprawled across my living room coffee table, the images glowing against the warm wood like memories flickering in a fire. They were laughing, playing, and unburdened by adult concerns. As I flipped through the pages of their childhood captured in pixels, I felt a wrenching ache. I longed to be part of their joy again, without the weight of obligation tethering me down. But I knew that if I truly wanted to maintain our relationship, I had to be firm in my resolution. It's not about being their go-to, I reminded myself. It's about being present on my own terms. As the weeks turned into months, a surprising burst of courage flourished within me. I reveled in the newness of my independence, every discovery feeling like a stepping stone leading me farther away from the self I had been clinging to for too long. Bit by bit, I began to reconnect with my nieces and nephew. I made plans for thoughtful, spontaneous outings, just the two of us. What do you think about painting pottery this weekend? I asked my niece Alice one day after school, her eyes widening with excitement. I love that. Can we get ice cream afterward? She chirped, her little voice buzzing with joy. Absolutely. It's the perfect day for ice cream. The anticipation of that excursion filled my heart with glee and reminding me that we could still create beautiful memories without the weight of old expectations. I began to actively engage with them, weaving in touches of urgency and intentionality into each moment. No more lazy afternoons filled with distractions. These moments were mine to shape, to mold into something richer and sweeter than before. With each visit, I saw their faces light up like fireflies under glittering stars. I watched them blossom, even as my own life underwent radical changes. My weekends transformed into adventures tailored just for me. I poured my energy into rediscovering forgotten hobbies like painting, gardening, and hosting friends for lively game nights. I felt alive in ways I had abandoned long ago, drowning out the anxiety that had stirred in silence for years. Then one afternoon, I received a message from him. "Can we talk? I really want to apologize." The words hit me hard. I had been juggling a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts, convinced our relationship had stumbled beyond repair. How could he be coming to me now, suddenly willing to meet my efforts halfway? Almost instinctively, I felt a mix of resentment bubble alongside my surprise, but I gently chose to roll it back. Reflecting on our previous conversation, I reminded myself that this journey was not just mine, it was ours. When we finally sat down for coffee a few days later, I watched him as he stirred his cup mindlessly, a hint of nervousness flickering across his face. "I've been thinking a lot about everything we talked about," he started, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a vulnerability I hadn't seen in years. "I never realized just how much I have relied on you. I didn't mean for it to get this out of hand. I'm really sorry," he said softly, his voice like a murmur of sincerity. "Thank you," I replied, feeling the tension begin to ease. "I appreciate you saying that. It's been challenging for me, too. I know that I love my nieces and nephew deeply, and I felt resentful for not being able to be there for them the way I wanted to, but I needed to understand where I fit in without being overwhelmed." His gaze softened, and he nodded, relief washing over him. I get that now. You standing up for yourself has made me realize that I need to step up more, find balance in my life without burdening you. His words echoed in the cafe, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope for the relationship we shared, not just as siblings, but as individuals striving for mutual respect. How are the kids doing? I redirected the conversation so we could navigate the smoother waters of family. They're great. I actually found a local sitter I can trust. There was a renewed sense of pride in his voice. I know it sounds silly, but this felt like a big step for me. I never thought I would need help, but it's about time I learned to share responsibilities with others. I caught myself smiling. The image of him asking for help warmed my heart. It felt so right, and I realized how much I wanted to reconnect with the kids and be a cherished aunt again, not just a caretaker. That's wonderful. I can tell they adore spending time with you, I remarked, picturing their faces lighting up when he walked through the door. Thanks, I'm really trying to find the balance. I want to be their dad, but I also need to take care of myself, he replied, his look serious yet determined. Family is always about balance, I've come to learn. You can take time for yourself without feeling guilty. I've learned to say no when I need to. It's so liberating, I said, the words spilling from me as if they were long bottled up. Our conversation flowed like a gentle stream, breaking free from the rocky path we had stepped onto in the past. With every laugh and story shared, I saw the bond we enjoyed strengthening under the weight of newfound honesty. I could feel our relationship evolving, shifting from obligation into companionship, a mutual respect blooming where burdens once lay festering. After that coffee meetup, we gradually began to share family values anew. I watched with admiration as he followed through on his intentions. The kids enjoyed the company of a more engaged father who celebrated their unique quirks. I learned he had been enlisting friends for a fun soccer night, helping him take part in their lives without making it a chore. I even took them out for ice cream, he boasted one day when I visited. It made my heart sing to see the sparks of joy in his children's eyes and watch their laughter rise like bubbles in soda on a hot summer day. I'm so proud of you, I told him during that visit, the words almost pouring out like a soft melody, threading through us in lovely waves of sisterly love. The turning point arrived one sunny afternoon when we organized a family barbecue. John flipped burgers expertly while I played frisbee with the kids, their laughter curling upward like wisps of summer clouds. The sun bathed everything in warmth, the aroma of grilled food melding with the sweet, sun-kissed grass. I relished every one-on-one moment as I tossed the frisbee to little Leo, who would scamper off with glee, his laughter ringing clear across the yard. "Catch it, Leo," I cheered, feeling alive as I chased after that happy little boy. "Hey, Auntie, look at me." He squealed, arms outstretched as he dove to catch the frisbee. "Good catch." I celebrated when he finally snatched the frisbee in his tiny fingers. The thrill of happy screams among my nieces and nephew rekindled a hunger inside to embrace living that I had almost forgotten. Everything felt right in that moment. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in beautiful hues of orange and pink, John leaned over, flipping yet another burger, a content smile playing on his lips. "It's good to see everyone enjoying this," he remarked. "Yes, it is," I replied, the warmth of reconnection settling in my chest. "I love our family, but I love my freedom too. I don't want to go back to how things used to be. This feels perfect." "Me too. Your independence makes me want to be better. I may have made mistakes, but I'm learning," he said, a sincerity in his voice that moved me once again. "I am proud of you, John." "I know it's not easy to change old habits, but you are doing it," I answered, my heart swelling with joy. As laughter pierced the evening air and the sun slipped behind the horizon, I felt the sweet embrace of victory coursing through me. The victory lay not just in solidifying my place as the fun aunt again, but took form in our evolving relationship, one blending respect, love, and boundaries, a canvas I had painted with fresh strokes. I was no longer viewing this as a fight for self-worth, but as a chance to empower myself alongside the family I adored. In that moment, illuminated by fading daylight, I realized that my journey had not just been about reclaiming my own life. It spilled into loving my family deeply, nurturing relationships that soared beyond old expectations. I stepped back, taking a deep breath and inhaling the scent of summer and freedom, ready for whatever came next. The journey was not over, but now I could face it head-on, feeling resilient and renewed, full of love for those who mattered most to me. I had finally taken a stand, reclaimed my life, and the victory was deliciously sweet.